Hello, my name is Elissa Kaplan. Today is Tuesday, April 29th, 2014. The Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County is delighted and honored to be interviewing Eric Pleskow. Good morning. So, Mr. Pleskow, tell us a little bit about your family. Where were you born and when were you born?
I was born in Vienna, Austria, on April 24, 1924. 19 years ago.
That's great, and you don't look a day over 75.
Right. Well,
Tell us a little bit, who were your parents?
my father's name was Joseph, and he was a merchant in the textile business. And my mother was a dressmaker, and her first name was Teresa. She was born on the 19th of September 1900. And my father was born on the 20th of August 1898.
And were they both from Vienna?
No, my mother was born in Budapest because my grandfather was sent there by his company. And during that time, my grandma gave birth to my mother. And my father was born in Warsaw. And then they moved to Sevastopol in the Crimea, stayed there until 1905. And he was 7 years old. And the reason for their moving, they were on the way to this country, to the States. And they went for a walk on a Sunday, and they came home, and they found an unexploded shell in the bed. They lived on the ground floor, and it seems that some sailors were revolting from the Potemkin, and just loosened this shell, and they figured this is not a good place to be. And so they were on the way to the States. And
What year was that?
1905. And my grandfather got very sick in Vienna, and they couldn't continue the trip. And that's how my father grew up in Vienna, and I was born. And he got married eventually. I was born there.
Right.
And that's the sad story of my existence.
Oh, no, it's a wonderful story. So what was it like growing up in Vienna?
It was actually, for me, rather good, but the anti-Semitic undertones, of course, existed always.
Right.
And they just didn't go away. I grew up in that atmosphere, as did many. I think there was about 300,000 Jews in Vienna. A lot of Jews from the East got stuck in Vienna because Vienna was a beautiful city, nice to live, and although anti-Semitism existed all over Europe, in the Dreyfus case, around the turn of the century and all that, etc. But it was bearable.
Tell us about going to school and your education.
Yeah. Well, education was public school, and later on, as I got older, high school obviously was in an anti-Semitic atmosphere because Jews were in a separate class. And
That started when you were in high school. And what years are we talking about?
1934.
Not 30.
I mean, there was the Austro-fascism. The chancellor of our country, who was assassinated also in 1934. It was a republic, but operated by fascists. Austro-fascism, fascism of the church.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's 1934.
And then what happened?
Well then, of course, slowly, or not so slowly, an underground movement developed in Austria.
Now, did you manage to graduate high school? From gymnasium, from high school? No. Okay.
I finished it
Okay, so.
at night. No, in 1938, in 1938 Hitler marched in, the Germans marched in.
And we need for you to speak just a little louder
Yeah.
if you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hitler marched in 1938.
In March of 1938. And although many people continued to go to school, I refused. I was involved in fights every day, after school, etc. And finally, I had enough of it, and I refused to keep on going.
And how old were you then?
I was 14.
14.
Yeah. And I lived in 1 year under Hitler. I mean, I lived under Hitler. We existed under Hitler, and until we finally got out, which was also very fortunate because we had no knowledge of what was going to happen.
So how did you manage to leave Austria?
Well, we finally got papers, affidavits, to come to this country because my dad had these relatives who from Sevastopol ended up in Buffalo, of all places.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were pharmacists or doctors. Of course, the American authorities in those days didn't make it easy for people like us to come to this country.
Now you, so this is like 1939?
38.
38.
38 into 39. And they tried everything to keep us from coming.
What kinds of things did they do?
Well, there's a spot on your body. You have to wait another year to see whether there's been a change. Piece of paper was incomplete. The comma was missing. 6 weeks one way, 6 weeks another way.
Wow.
I mean, there were Nazi sympathizers in the State Department. And that basically is acknowledged now, finally. I mean, reluctantly, but that's the reality. It was quite extraordinary.
So did your whole family get out?
Well, my parents and I.
Now, did you have any siblings, brothers or
Yeah,
sisters?
my brother died in '37. He was ill since birth, practically, since he was 6 months old. It must have been meningitis, which in those days they didn't have antibiotics or anything like this. And if he had lived, I wouldn't be here. because my parents wouldn't have left it. And I didn't want to leave my parents either. I could have gone on this children's transport to London, to England, and but I didn't want to leave my parents. So we, as I said, if something is going to happen to us, the possibility was, of course, there. And then all three of us were. And I was fortunate, and we got out the last train before the beginning of World War II. Not that we knew. We didn't know that it would be the beginning of it, but we left in the air.
So you took a train to...
From Vienna to Paris. All prepaid, the only money that we had left. And we got into Paris on September 1st. That was the day.
Wow. Wow.
And then we were really stuck with a German passport. My passport is in the museum in Berlin now, but I had my mom's passport still. And then we had everything prepaid. We couldn't take any money out. And so we were booked. I had a problem with my dad. My father wanted to go with the Bremen because he could take out a little more money.
Okay.
And I said, I'm not going on a ship, there's a German ship. And of course, in those days, in Europe, you didn't argue with your father. But I did, and it was a good thing because we would have gotten killed.
So did you get to a ship?
No, it wasn't that easy because we had to get from, it was prepaid, from Paris to Boulogne-sur-Mer, and it was a Dutch ship, and this ship would have gone straight from Boulogne-sur-Mer to Hoboken. But everything was gone, there was no, they weren't going to land in Boulogne-sur-Mer. And so it became a problem, how to get to that ship, to get from Paris to Rotterdam. And that's very difficult to do with the wrong papers and with no money. But somehow I was able to arrange it with some aid, help, etc. And fortunately, with a young man from the Holland America line who helped me to get papers to make it possible for us from Paris to get through Belgium and into Holland. And that was just luck.
Wow. So then you made it to the United States. So you took a ship to the United States.
Right. I landed here on September 14th.
And you went to your relatives in Buffalo?
No.
No.
They were not that interested, basically. We had a distant cousin who lived in Brooklyn, and so we were able to live there for a week. And then we had to get some aid, but it was pretty rough. And we ended up in Washington Heights, which was the so-called Fourth Reich. And then slowly similarity. I went back to school after 4 or 5 days.
And so you were in high school? And
High school, yeah. Finished, and I did reasonably well. I got 75 in English, which was pretty good.
Now, did you know any English before you came?
Yes, like my aunt's hat is on the table.
That type of English, right. So you're very good with languages, which we're going to hear about, I think.
Well, I tried.
Yeah, you are.
You are. You are. Okay. So,
Yeah.
how did you get from... Yeah, and we need for you to speak up.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So, how did you get from high school with your 75 in English
Yes.
into the United States military?
Well, no. First of all, I volunteered.
Oh, I thought you were drafted. Okay. Never mind, go ahead.
Which my parents didn't know.
And you were
Rejected.
rejected. Now, you were 18 or 17 or?
No, I was about 1939. 1940. Actually, no, 41. We only entered the war in 1941. And so basically, I didn't tell my parents, but I didn't need to also because I was rejected not being a citizen. But 2 weeks later, I got drafted.
Oh.
If you think that things are screwed up now, rest assured they've been screwed up.
So, were you drafted into the Army?
Army, yes.
And...
Yeah. No, actually, there's a very interesting thing happened. An officer, a lieutenant, approached me and said, "You know, I understand you're born in Austria. Would you like to volunteer? We are trying to form an Austrian battalion." I said, "You gotta be kidding. You must be joking. You obviously don't know what's been going on." Right? The Austrians were worse than the Germans.
So, yes.
Right. I mean, and of course, the Americans in foreign policy are not the brightest. And so they either didn't know this or they didn't want to know it, but certainly it didn't work for me.
There you go. So, so you got drafted into the Army. Where did you go for your...
After weeks of being in Fort Dix.
You went to Fort Dix
Fort
in New
Dix,
Jersey.
in New Jersey. After weeks in Fort Dix, I was a veteran already. I thought I was going to be drafted into the general staff, but it ended up, I was one of 400 in Camp Wheeler, Georgia.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Camp Wheeler, uh-huh. What, do you remember what town that was in?
Yeah.
He does. Do you remember what town in Georgia?
Yes.
I can look it up.
No, yeah, Camp Wheeler.
Well, before we get to
Yeah.
Camp Wheeler, how was basic training at Fort Dix?
There was no basic training.
You were just sitting there?
Cleaning the toilet and making the bed and being sure that the quarter jumped when you dropped it.
But did you have exercises and learn how to
Yes,
shoot a gun and all that stuff?
yes.
Yeah, so they sent you to Georgia. What were you?
Macon, Georgia.
I was in Macon, Georgia.
Macon, Georgia.
I know it. I mean, I know the town.
You know the town?
I do.
Fabulous.
We could talk later.
Yeah.
So what was the training there at Fort Wheeler? What were they going to do?
Camp Wheeler.
In Camp Wheeler,
Infantry training.
you know, infantry.
Infantry. etc. But in the meantime, before all this happened, I got a job in this summer job. And then the man who employed me asked my parents whether I could go to night school and to keep me during the day. Before. And so it ended up that I was the last male employee in that company, you know, after everybody was drafted, etc. And this man also was very well connected, which was helpful to me eventually.
What kind of company was it?
A motion picture company. It's a documentary film company. 16 millimeter in those days. And how did I get to this place? It was because my mother made curtains for a screening room for them. And I said, ask if they have maybe a job for me. Well, they did. They liked me. They kept me. And so I ended up doing this. This man was a Republican, and in 1936 in the convention, met a lady who was a Democrat. She was the society editor of the Chicago Tribune. And of course was well connected with Roosevelt and it ended up that they used their connections with the war, in those days, the War Department, so that I was pulled out of the infantry and put into the Signal Corps Photographic Center here in Astoria.
Oh, and okay. So you weren't in Macon, Georgia. You weren't in Georgia very long.
Not very long, and the Army was not very happy with that, but I was. You can imagine. In any case, that's how I got transferred to the Signal Corps.
Did you find the Army difficult?
I mean, an army is an army, and gotta expect, certain things will take place, that make no sense to a civilian person. But I did what I had to do, and I ended up in this, doing some training films for the Army.
So how was that? So you were in Long Island,
Yeah.
and you were doing training films.
Yeah.
Were there a lot of people working in this
In the
department?
studio? Well, yes. A lot of guys from Hollywood. Yeah, mostly that was from Disney.
From Disney?
Yeah, Disney people. Yeah, it was most of them. In any case, so this is what I did, and then I got pulled out of there. Each time somebody wanted to ship me out, somehow somebody saved me, and I got pulled out and eventually sent to Camp Ritchie, which is the military intelligence camp, where there were a lot of people like me from Austria, from Germany, from France, from Europe, European guys. And so that's how I went overseas, by the way.
Oh, okay. So this was a totally different feeling when you got with this group. It was.
Forget everything else. And the reason for that was because that was an important place to interrogate prisoners.
At Camp Ritchie.
Yes. No, not
No,
at
no, no.
Camp Ritchie, but overseas.
Okay, so
Overseas.
what year are we talking about?
Practical, we're talking 1944.
So in 44. Okay, so they sent you overseas with this group of people. Where did you go?
Le Havre, and then through France into Germany. You know, crossing the Rhine. Great.
So now, was your unit embedded in another? Were you protected by other people, or you had to
No.
take care of yourselves?
I had to take care of myself. And my job was to interrogate these people, the Germans that were across the
So
line.
you would go to American places, American camps, and
No camps, but just grab these guys that were taken prisoners.
okay.
At that time, we already advanced into Germany. I mean, at the beginning of Germany. And so, basically, my job was to find out what the plans were, their plans.
Aha. And so, of course, you were speaking to them in German,
Yes.
right? And what was a typical day like? Like, what was one of these sessions like?
Depended. That depended on what was going on in the area. It depends on their behavior, basically.
So did they tend to be cooperative?
It varied. Some were petrified. There was no great heroism displayed by them at that time. But basically, it was almost over.
So so you actually got information from
Yes,
people?
oh, yeah. Some of value, some of no value. It varied, basically. You know, a lot of people ask the same things as if there were a pattern. There was not. I mean, you started afresh every day. You know, and then depending on how people felt. For example, obviously I have a slight German accent to it. And they recognize the fact that I'm from Austria.
Right.
And so if you get an Austrian who thinks that he's got a friend, right, and you had,
So you tried the friendly approach.
No, well, they tried the friendly.
They tried to.
Yes, there's a difference there. No, that is when they thought that perhaps that made a difference, you know. And as I say, it's something without a pattern. But we did what we had to do, and just kept on moving.
How were you organized? Who did you report to?
I reported to a lieutenant colonel who actually came from the Persian Gulf Command. And why was he attached to this unit? Because his wife liked the theater. I'm just giving it to you the way I got it. Yeah. He was actually a railway man.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and he ran the Persian Gulf railway system that we had because we occupied them. I mean, our problems with the go back to this to the time.
Right. So let me get something straight. So when you were doing the training films on Long Island, you were in the Signal Corps.
Yeah.
Now, when you were in got sent overseas, you were no longer in the Signal Corps. No, you were attached to intelligence.
Information Control Division, military intelligence.
And how many people were in your unit?
15.
So a small unit.
Oh, yes.
And you were kind of on your own. You had to go wherever they told you to go.
Had a chair, but with no wheels.
Right. So did you catch rides on the trucks or did you walk where you had to go?
Well, I tried to get a ride, always, but it didn't always work that way.
Right. What do you think was your most important piece of information that your unit found out about?
War was over. Basically, at that time, that's all we were waiting for, you know. Basically, that it's permeates down there, basically. And that preoccupied the interesting, certain things, you know, I had, other than taking care of my leg that I lost, my foot or whatever, just recently, you know, that I don't have very much to do now, and I'm not looking for anything. And so I remember just the other day, I was sitting in the studio, because I ran the studio for the Army, and a lieutenant, American lieutenant came. He had thrown out my we did a newsreel, Anglo-American newsreel for the Germans, for the two zones, to keep the Germans off the street. And this particular, I needed local news also, so I had cameramen and all that. And it seemed they threw out some of my cameramen that I put in there with their families. I mean, I had to feed them also. And he wouldn't let go. Lieutenant Silverman, I'll never forget, Mr. Silverman would not relent. And so I lost the quarters for my people. So I needed to get some quarters for them. And I went to the mayor and got a list of people. And just the other day, I don't know why, these things come back now that I'm 90. I mean, this information is of no value whatsoever. But it so happened that I requisitioned a villa and that belonged to a man called It's going to be very hard.
What, to find it in there?
55.
Okay. So tell us about finish up the villa story.
The lady, the woman there was, she was very upset. I mean, that I'm taking her house and I'm giving her 4 hours to get out. I said, I think I'm terrific because they gave me two in Vienna. So after a lifetime of my parents, their savings, etc. And it turned out whose house this was. His name was Ulrich Graf. I'm sure you don't know who he is. Most people don't know who this man is, but you can Google him. He saved Hitler's life in 1923. I didn't know this. It was just a total coincidence.
Wow, and you took his house.
Yes, can you imagine? He was in the hospital because in 1923 he threw himself in front of Hitler and then he marched down the Friedrichstrasse to the Viertel. And he got 3 shots through his lung. from the rice fair. So that's a total coincidence.
Wow, so here you are in France and Germany with your camera crew, and you're running, what was your rank then?
Yeah. And by that time I was the equivalent of a major, which my colonel thought that a major is the guy who is too high in rank to do some work and too low in rank to do anything of importance. So,
You were very in between.
yeah. In any case, thank you. Now, how did I get to run this studio?
Yes, how did
This
you?
was interesting because the war in Europe was over, and the intelligence group was located in a place outside of Frankfurt, waiting for a new assignment, and that was Japan, of course.
Right.
And so we had this formation at like 4 in the morning or 5, and they said, and they called out the names for this, and they called my name as well. And I reported to this lieutenant, and he said, you have to see somebody else, etc., whatever. It turned out that I was asked to see a General McClure, who was the head of the Information Control Division. And the reason for that was that he needed to talk to me about something. So I reported to him. He was on Eisenhower's staff. And I went to his house. This was in Bad Homburg, outside of Frankfurt. And sit down, have a cup of coffee. It's very nice. He said, can you help me? Because I have this 8mm projector and it's broken. Can you fix it for me? I said, no, I can't fix this. He said, well, it says you're a film technician. I said, but it's something quite different. I said, terrible. He said, you know, we're going to be taking the studio. Can you handle the studio? So I said, I think so. Now, I've never been in a studio, but I figured, what can they do to me? I'm not, I don't do this that well, so
And you had people to help you, so.
yeah, sure. And so I did it rather well.
Now, where was the studio?
And right outside of Munich, Grünwald, right adjacent to Munich. And I did this thing, and I did it well.
What did they want you to film in the studio?
To operate it.
I mean, but what did you take? What did you produce? What did you take
we
pictures of?
produced, first of all, Newsreels. Then I had to start film production, the means of film production. Then I had to set up a distribution system for films, for American films, as well as for German films. And I had to start an industry again. We had a few of these. Munich was the biggest province, Bavaria. It's like Texas here. And then with Munich, with Hamburg. No, Hamburg was British. No.
Stuttgart, maybe?
Stuttgart was American. Frankfurt was American. And then we had Berlin, the American sector.
Berlin. So what, so you produced like weekly newsreels?
Weekly news,
And what-
Anglo-American.
And,
the-
and they were shown back in the States, right?
No,
No?
it was shown in German.
Oh, in Germany.
The idea was that we had to try to keep the Germans off the street. There was no heat, and it was a bitter cold. These 2 years were unusual. It's like our winter here this year. It was just terrible. And then start the development of also entertainment films.
But tell us about the newsreels. What did you kinds of things did you show in the newsreels?
Well, first of all, the continuation of the war with Japan. And then the rebuilding of the German economy, the beginning of it. It was very quick, actually.
Well, you said that it was very cold and there was a lot of destruction in the cities and...
Complete. Actually, I think what they've been able to do was miraculous. Now, we helped them a lot, with but still, it takes your own efforts.
So, I understand that you did some filming at Dachau.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it was after the fact, and it was all done. It was over. We forced the Germans to go and look at what they've done. They didn't want to. You may have seen some of the films that were brought out, which they just don't want to look at.
So that was you, huh? Taking in charge of those films. And
Not all.
and what about executions?
Yes, and then I got an order to go to Landsberg prison to film the execution of 12 guards from the Dachau prison camp. And it was rather interesting because I had a jeep by the cameraman, and I drove right through. I showed my identification, and there was no further ado. And there were 2 gallows, one for Protestants and one for Catholics. Right.
Okay.
We had them 6 and 6.
An interesting division.
Yeah. Then we had 2 executioners, one American sergeant and one German. I mean, it was quite an eerie sight when you drove into the courtyard, and on the right side, of course, I'll never forget it, there were 12 coffins leaning against the wall, ready for these guys. And my cameraman was a German cameraman, and he fainted, it was not exactly the thing. I, myself, was not, I wasn't brought up to photograph the execution of people. But I did it, and so forth and so on. And years have passed. And about 4 years ago, I got a call because My name is, I mean, I thought I was just walked in and showed my ID. So, it's all in Washington. But my name is connected with this execution.
So they took your name when you came. Where is this film today?
I don't know, the Library of Congress probably have it.
So it went to the Army, of course.
Yes, yes. The execution in Landsberg prison. I think you would be able to find it.
Right,
And it's actually quite interesting.
So that sounds like, was that the hardest day of your career?
It was a tough day because I go, who do you talk about? Who do you talk? Who do you tell? I couldn't tell my mother. You know, I mean, she didn't bring me up to photograph the execution of 12 guards, even though they deserved it, basically. I would have liked to maybe see more.
How did you, how did you feel being an Austrian Jew transplanted to the United States and then fighting in the United States against the Germans and the Austrians? How was that?
Great, great. For me, the war in Europe was personal. That's why I volunteered and was rejected, and 2 weeks later. But for me, this war was a personal thing. And it was cool. The crossing of the Rhine, the second time, first coming out, going in, but special. I'm particularly popular in Austria now.
Tell us about that.
Yes.
How did people find out about you?
Well, I've been rather successful in Hollywood, and so the film business is an international business. So they must have must have heard about me, etc. And starting in the 70s, particularly, I was particularly successful at those days. And they asked me whether I should, for example, give you a video medal. You know, I never earned a medal from the Austrians, but I got it. So when they first offered me, I said, well, why are you offering this to me? Because I've not done anything for you at all. And I don't.
Well, so you have to get us from filming in Germany to Hollywood. So how did you get out of the Army and how did you leave Germany and get out of the Army and get back to the United States? What happened?
Well, I never really left the United States, you know, that way. And I looked for a job in the movie industry.
Well, when did you get discharged from the Army?
Well, in the 40.
So you were in Germany
Yes.
until 1948.
Yes.
So you were there
But-
through that
but-
whole time.
Yes, but not as an Austrian or a German, but as an American.
Right.
So that is the absolute. And now, for example, I'm the president. I have been for 17 years, president of the Vienna Film Festival. They asked me in '78 whether I would do this.
Boy, do we have a job for you here.
And
Well, but wait, before the Vienna Film Festival, you got discharged from the army.
Yes.
You came back
yes.
to your parents, and
Well,
what? Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, I went. I was looking for a job, basically, and I ended up working for United Artists, which is Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford's company.
And you got connected because of your earlier job, or?
Because of, yes. Because when people, Americans, particularly Americans, totally dependent on you overseas. It's over with the past and all that. So basically, I had a number of offers from other companies as well, but I ended up with United Artists.
And so you moved to California?
No,
No?
never. The head office was always here.
Oh.
And eventually, after some years, obviously, I became the head of the company. And so I never moved the company because it made no sense. It was a film distribution and financing company. So why move to California? I didn't want to bring her in Beverly Hills and her brother.
Right.
I think it's the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you getting tired?
You tired?
Are you tired?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, good. Well, I just wanted to, well, we're getting a great story here.
Yeah.
So did you come back and did you
I came back here.
did you meet someone and get married?
No, I met my wife in South Africa.
Okay.
That's my mom.
Right. I got a job in the foreign department. And said I have to learn the business, and after a couple of years, they'll send me overseas on an assignment. It was in December, and in March I was sent overseas to South Africa.
Wow.
And that's where I met my wife. Couldn't meet her roommate, whom I tried to meet. I met on the way down from London.
So she must have been your bashert. So then you brought her back to New York, and
Yes, again, very difficult. Spot on the lung, and every hooker in Frankfurt got past, no problem. My wife not. And I had this guy by the throat, this public health guy. But a friend of mine pulled me off him because I'm not always as tame as I am here today.
so
But in any case, so that's I started to travel throughout the world, basically. And eventually I became the head of the foreign department, and then became the head, whatever. So and eventually I became the head of the company.
wow, what an amazing story. Amazing.
Yes.
And how did you get involved back in Vienna?
This is because we had a branch. I had an office there. I usually try to get in the morning and leave in the evening, stopping only on the cemetery where my grandfather was buried and my brother was buried. And I had my brother exhumed eventually and transferred to New Jersey next to my mom. I did for myself, for me, because there's nobody else. And I just to take a look every once in a while at the cemetery there, see what they're doing. So basically that's how I got involved with Vienna. And I must tell you, it's incredible. I said, why are you doing all these things? You tried to kill me. You know, just say it. It's now 75 years ago, and suddenly I'm such a wonderful person. I can hardly believe it. But you should really see, you gotta come to my house to see all these things that I get sent from the mayor and from the chancellor of the country and all that. I've become a real big knacker.
Oh my goodness. So, do you think, what did you learn from your time in the military? What lessons did it teach you?
That you can have a career and be stupid at the same time.
Do you, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the...
No, I'm quite happy to answer specific questions. You know, I take things, you know, that I was doing for granted. You know, I can't keep on sitting and finding myself so wonderful. So I have a difficult time with that. You know.
So what advice do you have for young people today about their lives?
I don't have much advice to give. I am worried for them. I mean, I think my children, my two children, hid it reasonably well. Times were pretty good. Even I, a post-war person, had a better shot than my grandchildren will have, in my view. And I'm a little concerned about their future.
Well, we will hope for the best.
Yes.
And we thank you very much for this amazing interview.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.